Hey, I know it's been a while, but the Tennafitzgerald is back at sea. Tenna B here for Common for the next 2 hours. Obviously, we had Gopher Basketball Weekly with Nico Medved, but the Tennafitzgerald setting sail 1 to 3 o'clock today. Don't worry. Common will be back tomorrow. Brett Blakemore with me as well. And Brett, you're in the same studio as I am. I don't think this has ever been done.
No.
We're doing some remodeling, getting some carpet done in the other room. So at least for one segment, you and I are going to be in the same room.
Whenever I turn around, it's usually because Pat Nicoletti's in the studio. I'm just trying to get some space. So this is uncomfortable.
So compared to the original Noon to 3 host, I actually do prep before these shows. And I have them, kept track of in my computer. And I always, when I feel like I haven't done a show in a while, I kind of look back. See, when was the last time I did a Tennafitzgerald? What were we talking about? It's been since mid-October. Common has not taken a vacation. Wow. Today's not even a vacation. He's just taking the day off from medical issues. But middle of October was the last time I was here. I was thinking I'm going to be a little rusty today. And clearly you were rusty too, because you forgot to do the Tenna Beat part open, which would have killed another 40 seconds for me.
Yeah, that's on me.
So a little disappointed in that. Obviously, a lot going on in the National Football League right now, with yesterday being the first day of legal tampering, and then tomorrow, all of those free agents at least can become official for the first time. Lots going on yesterday, not as much going on today. I will say, Brett, I know everyone is kind of convinced that Kyler Murray is coming here. And if I had to make a bet, I would bet as well. I would wager that Kyler Murray will be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. I still think there's a small chance that Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And because he played for Pittsburgh, I feel like he hasn't been talked about a whole lot. And especially since we found out Kyler Murray was going to be available, and since we found out Geno Smith has been available, it's almost like Aaron has just been pushed to the back burner. No one's even talking about it, just because he was at Pittsburgh last year and had a solid season. But I think we do need to remember, regardless of what information was coming out of Egan last year, and we don't know who had interest, who didn't, but it was reported, even acknowledged, that KOC was having conversations with Aaron Rodgers last year. So there has to be some interest by at least KOC or somebody in the building. There is a coaching change in Pittsburgh. So obviously Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers have a past with each other. And as far as I know, they seem to be, they like each other, but it's a regime change. It's different than what was going on last year. And Mike Tomlin's not there anymore. And I also think Aaron probably understands he needs a lot more around him at this stage of his career, and that Pittsburgh might not provide that. So I kept throwing out the Aaron Rodgers name in the last week or two, and even these last couple days. If he's coming back to Pittsburgh, and I get it, Aaron Rodgers is the diva of all divas and likes to string everyone along, and he might be doing that again. But it is a little odd now that not only is he's hitting free agency, right? If you wanted to re-sign with Pittsburgh, you've had months to do that. They've had exclusive rights to be able to talk to you. And now we're getting closer to when free agency becoming official. I still think Aaron Rodgers is out there trying to find his best situation. And that might end up being Pittsburgh. I still think he wants to have, if he hasn't already, a conversation with the Minnesota Vikings. And then literally 5 minutes before the show begins, I see a news report. Apparently Mike Garofalo, NFL guy, and also ProFootballTalk.com picked this up. He reported that the Steelers are reportedly, quote, nosing around the quarterback market.
Ooh.
So I'll say it again. I think Kyler Murray's the favorite. I am not ruling out Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota.
No one wants this to not happen more than me.
You don't want him here?
No, I don't want to ever see him in purple. I've already done it once in my life with one of my guys coming over
and
here.
And that went pretty well for a year.
And
ended in devastating fashion.
That is correct. And then the next year
was delicious.
Awful. Well, it was okay.
But the entire year was magical up until that point.
I went on a tour of U.S. Bank Stadium, and
You did?
I did. Well,
Wow.
my gal's a big Vikings fan, so
Okay.
she wanted to go. I think it's neat, too.
At least someone's rational in that family.
Correct. And they were very adamant. There was one point in the tour where they go, Brett Favre's best statistical year was here with Minnesota. And we go, okay, that's
Did they speak with the
fantastic.
Fargo, Minnesota accent
Yes, they
there?
did.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah,
It was a great year.
it was, and it could happen again. So obviously, I don't want it to happen being Packer guy. But then, if I'm a Vikings fan, and this O line the way that it is, and Rodgers can't run anymore. It's over for that. He's got to be pocket passer guy, and there's receiving weapons, and there's Hawkinson, and Jets, and I don't know. I almost am of the opinion that Kyler might give you a better chance just purely because if it breaks down, he can get out of there and make something out of nothing. Where I just think those days are behind Rodgers. So I would be hesitant.
They are.
But now, especially as a Packer guy, I definitely don't want it to happen. We had our nice little moment in Pittsburgh where Love beat him and they shook hands and they were all happy about it. I don't need two more of them.
Anyone who's available in March on the quarterback market, typically there's flaws, right? So I think everyone listening recognizes every single player that's available to be our next quarterback, including our current quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, there are flaws. And there's never going to be a perfect player out there. And if there was, you'd have to give up 4 first-round draft picks for him. Of the two that are available, of all of them that are available, to me, it's Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers. Kyler clearly has the highest upside. He's still relatively young. I guess if you're looking past just a 1-year fix, right? If you're looking for a guy that could be here 5-6 years, maybe he has, kind of has a renaissance to his career like Sam Darnold just did, and you could have here for a while. You mentioned his escapability. He's got the arm talent. He can run. Maybe he's motivated, which has always been an issue with him, I think, throughout his career in terms of focus and wanting to put the work in. But maybe he realizes, hey, I don't have that cushy contract behind me anymore. I guess I have to play it now. I have to play for it and earn it now. And this is my chance to turn my career around. If that happens, that would be great. I still don't know if stylistically he's a great fit for KOC, and I do think Aaron Rodgers would be more of a fit for KOC. But you are right at this stage of his career. I want to ask you about another player because I read the Star Tribune today, options that are still available for the purple here on day 2. And there were 4 guys. There's one specifically I want to ask you about because he played for the Green Bay Packers last year and he just became available. That would be offensive lineman Elton Jenkins. Is it Elton? There's a G in there.
I've always
How do we
said
pronounce
Elton,
it? Okay.
But yes, there
it's
is
not
a G in
Elchton?
there. No.
He was just released by the Packers.
That was a cap situation.
Yep. Former Pro Bowl left guard, but he also transitioned to center last season, which clearly is a need for your Minnesota Vikings. 30 years old, still well graded as a pass blocker at center by Pro Football Focus. And obviously, whoever we have at quarterback, whether it's J.J. McCarthy, who's still young, or Kyler Murray, who will be learning a brand new system, you probably want to have a rock-solid center. You still think he's got a lot left in his career?
I think he's good. I just don't know if centers, that's out of position for him. He was a guard his entire time until by emergency they needed him. And so he just got moved there and it was a makeshift offensive line. He was still good. It wasn't like when we traded Rashawn Gary, that was a see you later. We're done with you. This was not that. This was we'd love to have you, but we just can't afford to keep you right now. So he's a solid
Very
option.
Jonathan Grenard-like?
Yeah. Grenard-like or Aaron or someone like that. It stinks. I just don't know if I would put him at center or if you just move him back to his. But the interior of the line, obviously Darisaw is world class, but
when he shows up.
Well, there's that.
When he's actually on the field.
Yeah, so I don't know.
And when he doesn't give himself a pitch count and just leave in the middle of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, or when Micah Parsons doesn't run around him like he was tied to a post. Yeah,
he does that to most tackles.
That is correct. No, so I just don't know if I would bring him in as a center, but he's definitely a solid option if you want to pay for him, and he's worth it. Is one of those things you got to pick your battles. I like him. The
other names listed in the Star Tribune: safety Nick Cross of the Colts, defensive lineman Logan Hall of Buccaneers, and the one that I would be the most interested in is running back Rashad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They write in the Star Tribune today, the Vikings reportedly reached out to running back Travis Etienne's camp before he agreed to a $13 million a year deal in New Orleans. He says, will that lead to an Alvin Kamara trade? to Minnesota. If not, former Buccaneers running back Rachaad White may make sense as an experienced option coming off a career-high success rate as a runner. He also has over 200 career catches and pass blocking experience. He also says if they want pure speed, the Ravens, Keaton Mitchell, intrigue. So Aaron Jones, for now, I guess not coming back, cap casualty. You should look at the free agent market for running backs right now, especially now that Isaiah Pacheco signed with the Detroit Lions today. There's not much available at all. So this is Jordan Mason's backfield unless they spend a high draft pick on a running back in the draft. But I think they're going to go into the draft with Jordan Mason as your one. I guess Rachaad White to me would be the only guy out there that could potentially be a 1A, 1B situation where he's still getting a decent amount of carries. The rest of the market is, there's nothing. Because of Jordan Mason's style of runner, right, that he can do a goal line, short yardage situation for you, carry between the tackles. If you want more of an Aaron Jones type running back, I do think Rachaad White is a younger, I'm not saying he was as talented as Aaron Jones back in the day, but Rachaad White, as mentioned, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, which Jordan Mason ain't great at. He can block. He's a decent runner. I know his stats weren't great. He got stuck behind Bucky Irving there in Tampa Bay the last 2 years. But Rachaad White's a decent running back. After him, there's nothing. So he's kind of the only one I have interest in. Anyone else they get is probably going to be someone who will potentially get cut once they get to training camp anyways, because I'm sure they're going to spend a draft pick on one.
Yeah, Kamara doesn't interest me at all. It feels like he's ancient. I just
2016 Kamara intrigues me a lot.
Exactly. He's 30, which is not as old as I thought, but in running back years, that's old. You've been around the block. Rachaad White's 27, so a little bit younger. But I would agree with you that it's Mason's backfield. It doesn't fill me with loads of confidence, but it's not, awful. It's going to be a liability either. He can run the ball, but I do think he's not the best at being a pass catching running back. So I think if you can get someone that can, I don't know. I haven't looked at the all 22 of Rachaad White catching passes, but if he can do it.
Just look at the stats, right? He's someone who's catching 30, 40, 50 balls a year. So he's clearly capable in that role. We are going to talk more Vikings with Dane Mizutani of the Pioneer Press. He's going to join us at 1:30 today. And then Mark Rosen in studio back, as always, in the 2 o'clock hour. He will join us. But up next, Brett, I want to do a little The More You Know, and you're going to be a part of Blind Rank. We do that next. Right here on the Fitz.
Chime in what's happening to your favorite KFAN shows. You can make your voice heard on the Brad Sean Bryant KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
The beauty of these NFL free agency shows is you can play this at any moment. The New York Jets have got their quarterback. They have acquired Geno Smith from the Las Vegas Raiders in a trade for a 6th-round draft pick. So obviously the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They'll be selecting the Indiana kid. But Geno Smith heads to the New York Jets, which then basically all but opens the door here for Kyler Murray going to the Minnesota Vikings, because it seemed like the Jets were the biggest competition for the Vikings in terms of who can grab a quarterback off the free agent market. So if you're someone who wants Kyler Murray in purple, that is good news for you. Another Packer saying goodbye. What's happening over there in Titletown? Romeo Doubs, free agent wide receiver, is signing with the New England Patriots. 4 years, $70 million. I get it. It's the NFL. They can just print money. It does seem ridiculous on days like this. Like Jalen Naylor getting $35 million over 3 years is just absolutely crazy to me for a guy who's never had more than 30 catches in a season. Romeo Doubs is a solid, competent wide receiver, but $70 million seems like a lot. But I'll tell you what, he's not going to have a whole lot of competition in New England. He's going to have a darn good young quarterback throwing the ball. So pretty win-win situation there for Romeo. Not only gets paid a lot, but going to a perfect situation for him where lack of competition with a great young quarterback.
Yeah, he's had issues staying on the field, too. He wears the Guardian cap.
Everyone in Green Bay has.
Well, there's that.
Christian Watson.
Yeah, but when you think about the receiving core, you got Watson and Golden and Reed, and it was just one of those things where he could get more money, and his deal was up, and it was just one of those things you couldn't pay him what he was going to get elsewhere.
All right, so that's the latest. Obviously, we'll keep you updated if any other free agent signings happen, which I'm sure will happen nonstop as the show goes on. But now,
the more you know.
Brett, I like to have you learn something every single day when we do the Tennafitzgerald. Time for a little the more you know. Let's see how good you would be at this.
Okay.
If everyone on Earth peed into the Grand Canyon, how long do you think it would take to fill up?
It's either one of those where it's surprisingly little or surprisingly like forever. So like how long would the stream have to go before it fills? I'm going to go the other way. That's probably forever. So I'm going to say like 5 years.
5 years?
Maybe I'm underselling it by a ton.
So the Grand Canyon can hold about 1.2 quadrillion gallons.
Okay, it's probably going to be more than that.
Well, I think you were assuming like people would be peeing nonstop, and that just doesn't really happen in human beings, right?
That's what I was assuming is it's one massive influx.
So that would change things.
Like the water park in South Park.
So the Grand Canyon can hold about 1.2 quadrillion gallons.
Okay.
The average person pees about half a gallon a day. So if all 8 billion people peed at the same time, they would only add about 4 billion gallons of urine a day. So at that rate, it would take 800,000 years of constant peeing to fill it up.
The more you know.
Remember when we used to play over-under? That's why I'm terrible at that game. I have no bearing on anything.
I mean, you were thinking of it as like we're nonstop peeing until this fills up, which probably would be 5 years would then be a good answer.
Yeah,
but it's just, you can't, you don't have that much in you.
Yep.
It's now time for Blind Rank.
All right, Brett, time to play Blind Rank. I'm sure you are well aware of the rules. I'm going to give you 10 items. You need to rank them without knowing what's coming up next. So you could completely throw yourself off. Today, you are going to blindly rank teams that could win the Stanley Cup.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll go 1 as the top, 10 as your lowest chance. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The Buffalo Sabres.
I do. The Sabres are a fun little team they're leading the Atlantic. I don't think they can win the Cup. I suppose they could make a run. I would put them at like, I'm going to go 6.
6 for Buffalo.
Yep.
They've won 7 in a row again after they went on a double-digit winning streak just, a couple months ago. Since like December, is there any team that's played better than the Buffalo Sabres? I have to imagine their record's as good as anyone's after they got off to a slow start. Remember the days when we fantasized about Tage Thompson being like a trade deadline acquisition? How perfect would he have been here, right?
Yeah.
A top 6 center, guy with size, right-hand shot. And then the Buffalo Sabres just went on a run and kept winning and winning and winning. All right, you got Buffalo at number 6.
Would have been nice to get Alex Tuck back, too. But whatever.
The Anaheim Ducks.
They're definitely light years better than they were, where we would just go there and roll them like 2-1 every time they go to Anaheim. It'd always be the worst Wild games to watch in Anaheim. I don't have them much higher, especially if they got to go through the West eventually. I'd go either 5 or 6. I'll go 7.
All right, you got Anaheim at 7. I would put Buffalo ahead of Anaheim as well. I think Anaheim's going to be one and done in the playoffs. Yeah. I think they're going to take, even if they are the number 1 seed in Pacific, they're going to lose first round.
Well, you take Edmonton or Vegas or Seattle.
Don't spoil it. We have more coming up here.
I was just saying who their potential matchups would be.
All right, you got Buffalo 6, Anaheim 7, Dallas, the Dallas Stars.
I hate to say it. I think they're really good. They frighten me. They play the...
Well, you're playing them first
yeah, exactly.
First round.
I know, that's the worst part.
It's a cinch at this point.
Yeah, it's locked in more or less. It's who's going to have home ice. I'd put them up at 4. I think they're
number 4 for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
The Vegas Golden Knights.
I would put them probably... I want to save room for 5. See, then you got to play the game within the game. Do I think they have a better chance than the Ducks? Yes. Better than the Sabres? Yes. But now I've already locked them in, so now I've got to play the game.
And you don't know what's coming up next.
Exactly. I'm going to put them at 8 just because I don't think they have the firepower, and I want to save some spots for some other teams.
The Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not put them at number 1. They're on a historically good run. The Wild are on a historically good run, and they're not going to be able to catch the Avs in the regular season. So they're a really good team. I'm still frightened of them. I get Kadri. If you heard Russo talk about Kadri, he's like, he's 35. He's not as good as he used to be. They looked pretty good the other night. So
you can still be good without being as good as you used to be.
Yeah, well.
I mean, you see what Colorado has up the middle now? They already had Nathan McKinnon. They already had Brock Nelson. And they go acquire Nazem Kadri and then Scott Waugh as your, which is a solid fourth-line center. I'm up the middle. Yeah. They're about as good as it gets.
I do agree with Russo that I don't think Kadri is nearly as good, though. But they're still a very scary team. They're clearly the number 1 for me.
All right, so you got Colorado at 1, Dallas at 4, Buffalo at 6, Anaheim 7, Vegas at 8. How about Tampa Bay, the Lightning?
Yeah, they got to get healthy. They had like 2 or 3 centers out when the Wild just rolled them 5-1. If they get healthy, and maybe they're doing the LTIR Vegas copyrighted cap, situation, but I think they've got a ways to go. I would put them at 9 because that's all that I've got. I want to save 2, 3, and 5.
The Wild owned them pretty good the other night.
That is correct.
The Edmonton Oilers.
It's
a typical Edmonton season where they're not as good in the regular season as it could be, but they're still always scary in the playoffs.
Yeah, to me, it's either 2 or 3. I'm going to put them. McDavid finds a way to carry the team despite having bad goaltending, despite having some defensive issues, finds a way to carry them. So I'll put them
2, 3, 5, or 10.
Yep. I'll put them at 3, the Oilers.
All right. The Detroit Red Wings. You have 2, 5, and 10 available. Detroit. It's Hockey Town.
It is Hockey Town, and that's where the inspiration for the state of hockey came.
You got a nice little cute little town. We have an entire state of hockey. All right.
That's right. We've got a blue line around our borders.
Yeah.
All right. We took our knocks in the penalty box. It's no shot at them, but I'm assuming the next team is going to be better than them, so I will go 10 for the Red Wings.
10 for Detroit. So you have 2 and 5 available. Your Minnesota Wild.
Do I just go full
go Homer
mode? Let's do it. Let's put them at number 2. Right behind.
You just said how scared you were of Dallas. Now you've got them ahead of Dallas.
That's right. I think they can beat them, but Dallas is just so deep, and they've got so much scoring potential. And then Ottinger. I mean, this Wild team's the best we've ever had.
Yeah.
Point blank. There's no arguing that. I'm still frightened of when Jake Allen, we couldn't beat him for like a whole series. They couldn't score against him.
That was a much different team.
Correct. But Ottinger is a much different goalie than Jake Allen. So that team does worry me. I think they can beat him, but it's still frightening. But this is the most exciting Wild team in history. Put them at number 2. Let's go.
All right. And then number 5, you're going to have the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I'd probably trade them out for Tampa Bay at 9 or Detroit at 10. They're a fine team, but I don't know if they've got the legs for a cup run at this point. I like this blind. It's not bad.
All right, your final blind rank is Colorado 1, Minnesota 2, Edmonton 3, Dallas 4, Pittsburgh 5, Buffalo 6, Anaheim 7. They should be 10 on this list. Vegas 8, Tampa Bay 9, and Detroit 10. That's it. For blind rank, we'll talk Minnesota Vikings football with Dane Mizutani. He covers the Vikings for the Pioneer Press. We're going to chat with Dane next here on the Tennafitzgerald.
There's nothing like live hockey. Experience the Minnesota Wild at Grand Casino Arena all season long. You can secure your seats now, wild.com/tickets, and join the excitement, wild.com/tickets.
He's Brett Blakemore. I'm Brandon Molesky. This is the Tennafitzgerald. Coming back tomorrow. Let's take a peek at the purple. It's brought to you by Affordable Electric, and we're going to talk with the Pioneer Press writer for the Minnesota Vikings. That would be Dane Mizutani. Hi, Dane. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little bored. Not much going on, but happy to be on.
Well, you said you're bored. I was going to ask you, like, during free agency, or I guess the legal tampering period, are you basically like on call 18 hours a day? Are you able to like schedule anything else in life, or are you just focused on Vikings nonstop every single minute of the day?
I'd say yes and no. I mean, like in years past, like last year, for example, you knew they had money to spend. You knew that they were going to make a big splash. So you felt a little bit more on call now. This year, like the inactivity doesn't really surprise me. So I'm not sitting by my phone connected to it. Like I went on a run yesterday. I wasn't too worried about missing something. So I'd say it probably varies with the year. But yeah, I mean, as bored as I am, this was kind of expected. They weren't going to go out and spend a bunch of money like teams have so far.
So obviously the biggest news in the last half hour or so would be that Geno Smith traded from the Las Vegas Raiders back to where he started with the New York Jets. So many believe that the Jets were kind of competition for the Vikings for the top quarterbacks on the market, one including Kyler Murray. Percent chance Kyler Murray is the Vikings starting quarterback.
It feels like 95% at this point because like I thought the Jets were really the only other competition that might be jockeying for position with the Vikings for Kyler Murray. Maybe the Steelers make sense for Kyler Murray. Maybe they'll kind of dip their toe in depending on what clarity Aaron Rodgers does or does not give them. But I was looking at the Jets as really their main competition. So right now with Geno Smith getting traded there, it does feel a little bit like Kyler Murray or bust for the Vikings. The good news, I guess, is all the reports, if you're just reading the tea leaves, all the reports have really tied Kyler Murray to the Vikings already. So it feels pretty imminent. I'd say 95%. And, if he signs, I think he's going to be the starter. You can say, oh, there's going to be competition, or maybe, but I mean, he's not signing here to be the backup. But maybe you'd fake a competition, but Kyler Murray would win that.
So I know the guy you really wanted was Marcus Mariota, but he re-signed with the Washington Commanders. So after Mariota, was Murray the guy that you were looking at that would be the best fit for the Vikings? And how do you think he would fit? Because it does seem like his style contrasts a little bit with the type of quarterbacks Kevin O'Connell has typically had here in his tenure.
Yeah, I mean, Mariota would have made sense if JJ showed a little bit more last year, like get a veteran in. I think Mariota makes sense a ton in Washington. Happy for him. I've been a fan of his, obviously, for a very long time. But I think Kyler Murray always made the most sense to me. I wrote this in the Pioneer Press this week heading into free agency. Like if you're the Vikings and you want to compete next year, like he's the obvious choice. Maybe it's not a perfect fit, but when you're getting into free agency like this, there really is no perfect fit. A lot of these guys are available for a reason because they've either flamed out with their teams or their team is willing to let them go. I think the idea that the Vikings could maybe trade for Joe Burrow or maybe trade for Lamar Jackson kind of broke people's brain. Like that was like a fun fodder to talk about last season when the Vikings felt like they were pretty directionless. But those big names were never really on the table. So I think people talking about, well, Kyler Murray doesn't fit perfectly. He doesn't, but he's still the most talented player out there. And when it became pretty imminent that he was going to get released by the Cardinals, even before then, I thought he made the most sense for the Vikings. But as each day and week kind of progressed this offseason, he felt like the guy who made the most sense to me. And I still feel that way here heading into tomorrow, which maybe we'll see a little bit more movement on that front.
All right, there's probably no more cryptic player than Aaron Rodgers, and not only in the National Football League, but maybe in all of sports. And I know I shouldn't be surprised that on March 10th, Aaron Rodgers isn't signed somewhere because that's just his history and his nature. It still seems odd to me given, he played for the Steelers last year, and if you were going to resign, it would just make sense to do it in the couple months leading up to free agency. And here we are in free agency, and he has not signed anywhere yet. Do you think there's any chance, because there was obviously conversations with KOC and Rodgers last offseason, that Rodgers might dip on Pittsburgh and try to flirt with Minnesota again?
The only way I'd even entertain that as a possibility is if somehow tomorrow rolls around, Kyler decides that he wants to go to Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh decides that they want Kyler, and then the Vikings are sitting there kind of wondering where do they go next. Then I'd obviously think, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers makes sense. But right now, like, no, I don't see it. And it doesn't, I'm with you. It doesn't surprise me that he hasn't made a decision yet. I don't expect him to make a decision for a while here. But I think whenever he does, it probably just ends up with him going back to Pittsburgh or retiring. So it's fun. if he somehow wound up here and kind of fulfilled that Brett Favre prophecy, it'd be a heck of a year and certainly one worth following. But I don't think that's happening.
All right, let's switch positions. Let's move to behind the quarterback at the running back position. Aaron Jones getting released, so obviously there's an opening there, even though Jordan Mason's still here. A lot of the biggest name running backs are already off the board. Pacheco just going to Detroit now. ETN on his way to New Orleans. Kenneth Walker to Kansas City. Not a lot of significant names available. What do you think is the plan moving forward at the running back position? Are they just going to hold off until the draft, or is there still a name out there that would intrigue you?
I think the only name right now that would intrigue me is Rachaad White, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back who isn't going back there because the Buccaneers signed Kenneth Gainwell. So he would make sense if the price is right. He's a pass-catching back. I think that pairs pretty nicely with what Jordan Mason does. I think Jordan Mason will probably just end up being the lead back regardless of who they bring in. So you want to find someone who complements his skill set. I think Rachaad White makes sense. He can do that. Good pass catcher, pretty good pass blocker, which is something Jordan Mason has struggled with throughout his career. But the only thing that I would kind of be wary of is the money being thrown around to running backs right now. Rachaad White might cost more than you want to spend with how the contracts have played out. So if it's not him, I think it's got to be somebody in the draft, maybe in the first couple of days of the draft. You have 3 picks in the first 2 days right now. With maybe more coming depending on what happens here with if a potential Jonathan Grenard trade. I mean, he's a name that's been floated over the last couple of weeks here. So I think it's probably just going to end up with the Vikings looking at the draft pool. It's a deep running back draft, looking at the money that's been spent in free agency and just saying, let's get younger. Let's take a shot on an explosive guy in the draft. Rather than settling for maybe the second wave of the running back field.
All right, I need you to tell me what you know about cornerback James Pierre, who the Vikings signed from the Steelers yesterday, 2 years, $8.5 million. I think probably most Vikings fans weren't too familiar with him. It almost comes across as like an Isaiah Rodgers deal, where last year they got Isaiah Rodgers on the first day of free agency. They got him super cheap and ended up being a pretty decent starter for them. What can you tell us about Pierre?
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I knew a bunch about James Pierre before yesterday, because when they signed him, I was like, wait a minute. I had only thought I remembered him from, he had I think he had a pick that turned out to be not a pick in Dublin against the Vikings. So he's played against them. But I think with James Pierre, what I've learned in my research, he's a guy who he could project as somewhat of a late bloomer late in his career. He played roughly a little under 40% of the snaps last year for Pittsburgh, but a lot down the stretch. And if you like PFF grades, some people do, some people don't. He topped out as the number 3 ranked cornerback amongst those who had played at least 400 snaps last year. And in the number 2 ranked cornerback in terms of just specifically coverage. So there is something there. There's something in the tank. And Brian Flores has crossed over with him in Pittsburgh when he was there. Under Mike Tomlin, and the new defensive backs coach for the Vikings, Gerald Alexander, crossed over with him last year, having coached him in Pittsburgh. So I think James Pierre, while I don't expect him to be this lockdown corner who moves the needle a ton for the Vikings, it's a worthwhile depth signing with some upside too. You're right. It feels a lot like Isaiah Rodgers. To be honest, didn't know a ton about him last year when they signed him in the first day of free agency. Learned that it was a pretty good deal. So I trust Brian Flores. This guy's also 6'2", 195. That projects to be kind of what Brian Flores likes in his cornerbacks. Talking with Dane Mizutani. He covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Pioneer Press. You talk about depth. We also need some depth at wide receiver now because Jalen Naylor signs with the Raiders. 3 years, up to $35 million. A lot of money for a guy who hasn't had 30 catches in a season, but I don't think wide receiver 3 is super important for the Vikings unless they have injuries. It seems like they play a lot of 2 wide receiver sets and throw out a couple tight ends out there. But is there a guy in free agency? Is there an in-house option to move up into that spot? Is there someone they're going to draft? How do you see them addressing their wide receiver depth? Is there anyone who intrigues you? Yeah, I would assume at some point we see almost like a James Pierre at cornerback move at receiver, like a guy who they can bring in on the cheap that makes sense, having had experience in the league. I don't know exactly who that looks like. I know some people have tied them to Tutu Atwell. I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, because I think the Vikings, if they dip into the free agency pool, probably want someone who's a little bigger in terms of just frame. Their profiles at receiver are all pretty similar. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, similar body types. And then you look at Ty Felton and Miles Price, two speedsters who I think a possession receiver, if you dip your toe into the free agent market, kind of makes sense for the Vikings. But I don't expect them to go out and spend a ton of money to bring in, like, say, a Deebo Samuel, who's out there, obviously up there in age, probably over the hill. But somebody like that, I can't see that happening. I think it'll be more of a bargain signing. And then similar to what I just said about running back, I think the Vikings probably target some receiver in the first couple of days of the draft too. It's not a huge priority in the offense, wide receiver 3, like you said. But I do think there is a role for it in Kevin O'Connell's offense, and he's going to want somebody he trusts. So I think with TJ Hawkinson back, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, those will be your primary pass catchers. Whoever you take at running back or bring in at running back will probably be a primary pass catcher. But I wouldn't discount just the wide receiver 3. I think they'll do something to kind of shore up the depth there.
I think most people saw the Jalen Naylor departure coming. How about Ryan Wright leaving for New Orleans? 4-year contract, $8 million guaranteed, $14 million total. Did that catch you off guard yesterday?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, anytime I see double-digit money, and I know it's $8 million guaranteed, but you see the $14 million sticker shock of the 4-year deal for a punter, it made me kind of turn my head. I didn't think really anything of it heading into the offseason. I figured the Vikings would just find a way to bring him back, and they'd trot out the same battery of Andrew DePaula, who re-signed today, snapping to Ryan Wright, and Will Riker kicking on the other end. So I was pretty surprised by the Ryan Wright signing. They'll find somebody to punt the ball, but you got to find somebody who can hold for Will Riker. They did have a pretty good chemistry. Will Reichert's very, very good, so I think he'll be able to develop chemistry with whoever's holding the ball for him. But it's something to keep an eye on as they kind of search the market for who to replace Ryan Wright.
There were rumors within the last week or so about the Vikings maybe shopping Jonathan Grenard, that he wants a contract extension. He wants to get paid. How do you see the Grenard situation playing out? Do you think it's what percent chance he's traded? What percent chance is he staying here? And if he does go, what do you expect the Vikings to recoup for him?
Yeah, I still think it's more likely than not that he stays, just because if you're the Vikings and you trade Jonathan Grenard, you get worse. You get worse immediately by trading one of your best players on defense. The only reason I think it even has popped up as a possibility is because we talk about the money that's been thrown around in free agency, and the money that, edge rushers at the top of the list are getting right now. Jonathan Grenard probably wants a raise. He's at $19 million around there per year, probably underpaid by whatever metrics you want to look at to measure good or elite pass rushers. So he probably deserves a raise. And if you're the Vikings, do you want to commit that much money to a guy who turns 30 next year? When you have a guy in Dallas Turner waiting in the wings, probably ready to take on a bigger role. So I think if Jonathan Grenard says, or his camp says, look, we want to get up there in terms of how we're being paid relative to the rest of the league, then if you're the Vikings, it might make sense to cash out now, get as much as you can for him, because once he turns 30, once he turns 31, 32, if you've committed a bunch of money to him, he's never going to be more valuable than he is right now in terms of what you're going to get back. So while I wouldn't like to lose him, I think you get worse. Like I said, I think if he needs a bunch of money, you might want to just cut your losses at that point, get what you can for him, and take a big swing or a big bet on Dallas Turner turning into the player that you thought he would be when you took him number 17 overall in the 2024 NFL draft. So I still, like I said, I think it's more likely than not Jonathan Grenard's on the team, but if certain things break a certain way over the next 48, 72 hours, it might make sense that he go look out what you can get for him.
It wouldn't be a Vikings offseason unless we were talking about how they improved the interior of their offensive line. Ryan Kelly, with all the concussion issues last year, he retires. A bunch of centers are already off the market, and they're making a ton of money right now, and clearly the Vikings don't have a lot of money to work with. So I want to know, how do the Vikings feel about Blake Brandel and Michael Juergens potentially at center? Or do you still think they go out externally, whether it would be, I guess, on the cheap in free agency or even in the draft?
Yeah, that's the one I'm kind of waiting for today. I thought maybe we'd see some center movement, or the Vikings finding a way to kind of bring in some depth there. I know they like Blake Brandel. I know even before he played center last season, they thought he was a guy who could at some point potentially fill in the middle of the offensive line. And he was fine when he did. He wasn't a sieve in there who was giving up a ton of pressures left and right. But I think you would probably want somebody who's done it with more regularity than just rolling into next season, with Blake Brandel, who played center for the first time last year, and Michael Juergens, who looks more the part of a depth piece than somebody you want starting in the middle there. So I think they'll probably at some point try to find a veteran that makes sense, somewhat on the cheap, not too cheap, because you can't go too cheap with that, or you're going to be wishing you spent more. But someone in free agency makes sense. There's still a decent amount of talent in that second wave, but we'll see how that plays out from there. Maybe that's another one too. Day 2, day 3 of the draft, you look to kind of fortify the middle with a player there, with a prospect there. But I expect them to sign a free agent center at some point. Kind of surprised it hasn't happened already.
All right, final question for you, and this one might be a challenging one for you to answer because I'm assuming you haven't been at Egan too much since the season's been over. But Kwesi out, Rob Brzezinski in, but I'm guessing I'd like to know with you, like, what's kind of the hierarchy now and how decisions are being made? Like, is free agency still kind of running through Brzezinski? Is KOC making all the calls on this? What is that hierarchy set up like right now?
Yeah, it was interesting talking to Rob at the combine last month, or the end of February, a few weeks ago, because that was our question to him, like, who is the final say? Who has final say on the roster? So he kind of talked around it. Rob Brzezinski, we haven't really talked to him on the record. I've certainly never talked to him on the record since I've started covering the team, but talked to him a bunch just in the press box. He's a nice guy. Everybody loves him in the organization. And he kind of talked around who has final say. He said, well, it's going to be collaborative, and, you know, we'll talk to everybody and make sure we can kind of come to a consensus. But then he did admit, like, the Wilfs have asked Rob Brzezinski to kind of be that final say if push came to shove. Now, I don't think that means Rob Brzezinski is running this like a dictatorship and saying, this is my call, we're doing this. I think he has a ton of input from Kevin O'Connell. I would assume Brian Flores probably had some input in the James Pierre signing. I don't venture to guess that Rob Brzezinski was combing James Pierre tape and said, this is our guy. Like, I would assume Brian Flores had a say in that. So I think it's collaborative to a degree, to a certain point. But Rob's the acting general manager right now, and he has final say on this roster until the Wilfs say he doesn't. So that's kind of the hierarchy. But I don't know that it'll ever get to a point here over the next few weeks, even the next few months, where Rob is saying, this is my decision, and that's final. It's not really how he operates. You don't get hired in 1999 and last with the organization until now, 2026, if you're kind of a guy who's pushing everybody around. So he has final say, but I don't think he'll use it.
Thank you, Dane. Appreciate your time, and look forward to your Kyler Murray story Thursday morning in the Pioneer Press.
Anytime. Yep.
All right. Dane Mizutani covers the Vikings for the Pioneer Press. Mark Rosen joins us in studio next. We're going to continue probably a little Kyler Murray Vikings quarterback conversation with him next right here on the Tennafitzgerald.